Hello everyone, welcome to the Old Man and the Read. My name is Jerry. Today I'm going to discuss the books I've read by Thomas Mann. Thomas Mann was a German novelist and short story writer. He was born in 1875 and died in 1955. But he's considered one of the best writers of our modern era. He won the Nobel Prize in 1929 and just really a highly respected writer. In 1933, he moved to Switzerland after Hitler came to power, and and then stayed there until 1939 when World War II broke out, and then he moved to the United States for a period. And after the war, I think in 1952, then he moved back to Switzerland. But just a really great writer. So I'll show you the books I've read and say a little bit about them. Now, most of these, I should note, I read many years ago, and I've had to kind of try to brush up on what it is they're about. So we'll see how this goes. The first book I have is Budden Brooks. This was published in 1901, and it was written when Mann was 26 years old. But this follows a wealthy German family and it is about their decline over a few generations. But the story basically involves three main characters: Thomas, his sister Tony, and Thomas's son Hanno. But the book begins with the patriarch of the family, Johann, who has a very successful grain business. He leaves this business to his son, Jean, and Jean in turn leaves the business to his children, and that's basically Thomas. Once Thomas takes over, that really accelerates the decline of the business. He just wasn't able to properly manage the business, and it slowly started declining. Thomas then died at a fairly young age, 49, and he left the business to his son Hanno. But Hanno was only 15 and really had no interest in the business, and that just completely caused the collapse of it. In 1909, he published Royal Highness, and this is basically about a prince who is a captive to the position he was born into. And then halfway through the book, it becomes more of a love story, and this involves the prince and an American woman that he meets. In 1911, he published Confessions of Felix Cruel, and this is the story of a man, Felix Cruel, who uses his good looks and intelligence to con people, basically. But it is magnificently told. It's told as if it's in a conversation between the reader and Felix as he reminisces about his life. In 1912, he published Death in Venice. This really is more of a novella, not much more than a short story. But it's about an older German man who is visiting in Venice. He sees a 14-year-old boy and becomes infatuated with him, and he starts observing the boy and starts almost stalking him. But it's that story and kind of a tragic end. In 1924, he published The Magic Mountain, and this is a story about a young man who goes to visit his cousin who's in a sanatorium up in the Alps. The cousin has tuberculosis and he's there to recuperate. But the young man who goes to visit is only planning on staying a short time, but becomes ill as he's preparing to leave. And the illness continues, and eventually he is diagnosed that he has tuberculosis himself. And he's then convinced to stay in the sanatorium, and he stays there for about 7 years. In 1943, he published Joseph the Provider. This is actually the 4th book in a series titled Joseph and His Brothers. But it's the only book of that series that I've read. And this is all based on a biblical fable. But in this book, Joseph is sold into slavery by his brothers. Over time, Joseph is able to work his way up in Egypt, and eventually he befriends the Pharaoh. This friendship then leads to his ability for higher positions, and he eventually becomes one of the most powerful men in Egypt. And then years later, he encounters his brothers, the same ones that sold him into slavery to begin with. And this was all through a very improbable series of events that he met with them. But the story is written in just very biblical prose. In 1947, he published Dr. Faustus, and this is a story that's narrated by a man called Serenus Zetblum, and he's talking about the rise and fall of his friend Adrian Leverkon. But Leverkon is studying music, and he has intentions of becoming a composer. But he gets syphilis after an encounter with a prostitute, and seeks cures for it. But eventually he encounters the devil, and he enters into a pact with the devil for his soul. He is asking for 24 years of compositional genius, which the devil then grants. In 1951, he published The Holy Sinner, and this is a book based in about the 1200s, and it's about a baby who is set adrift by his mother, who had become pregnant by her brother. He is then found by fishermen, and is taken in and is raised by an abbot. He eventually learns his true history and begins a search for his mother, but is unable to, and in his search he comes across the land that is ruled by a beautiful queen, falls in love with her and marries her. She becomes pregnant, and then they learn that she is actually his mother. So this sends him into exile. He becomes a hermit, and is eventually bishop is sent by God to restore him, and makes him into the Pope. And the last book I have by Thomas Mann is a fabulous collection of short stories. This is stories of 3 decades, and these were written in a period from 1896 to 1922. There's 24 stories in it, and just exceptional ones. And included in this book is Death in Venice. But those are the books I've read by Thomas Mann. Just an exceptional writer. So I want to thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll watch another of my videos. Thanks.